What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So we have a 2006 CBR600RR here, and we are going to be focusing on rebuilding this bike. This was a theft recovery, so there was no key or anything like that. The ignition's damaged. I'll show you guys that here in a minute. And then I'm going to kind of go through the bike and show you what I'm looking for when I'm rebuilding this stuff, and show you, what I'm looking at, why I'm going to do certain things, and all that. So if you're trying to rebuild a bike, or you're looking to get into it, this might be a good video for you to watch and tune into. So anyway, let's get started. I'm going to kind of go on the rundown of what we're going to do here. So number one, we're going to evaluate the bike, see what we need, kind of make a parts list, and I would say that's the main goal in the whole idea of the first builds of bikes. So let's go through. I'm going to kind of show you what I'm looking for, and then show you what I'm going to replace and all of that. So again, stay tuned. Let's get into it. Kaboom! Okay, so first things first, the top triple was damaged. I did take the nut off because I am going to take this off. 12 millimeter here. Your clip-on as well. I like to just kind of leave the clip-ons pulled down, so I already loosened that one to kind of see what damage was underneath. It's damaged here, and this is an aftermarket ignition. I do know that because of this blue tape here. Usually aftermarket ignitions come with that, OEM ones won't, so that's just how that is. I went ahead and took the bolts off of this already, the windscreen, and so that kind of allows me to see a little bit more. What I'm going to do is also, bear with me here, take off this whole front end. So a lot of the bolts go into the fairing stay. The fairing stays hold basically the whole front end together. It holds the headlight, and then generally the front fairing gets bolted to the headlight with screws, and so on and so forth. So you can see the tabs already out here. There's two tabs where the headlight goes in on the actual fairing stay there as well. Fairing stays connect to the frame. So what we're going to do is get this headlight assembly off. That way I can see more of the forks, make sure nothing's bent. And then let me show you this gas cap here, which is gone. But you can see I drilled that out. So what you do is you flip up the area where the key goes in, and you just take a huge drill bit and you drill down. I kind of do like a circular motion until it actually pops, and then you can bring it up. You don't want to hit the lining of the tank or anything like that. It is okay if you get some metal and stuff like that. That's going to happen, but you can just vacuum it off. You do, however, want to double check your tank and make sure there is no metal shavings in there. So I suggest taking out the fuel pump and then double checking and ensuring there's not a lot of shards in there, because that can get into your fuel pump, the actual filter, clog that, and then you're gonna have problems with your fuel pressure and everything like that. So yeah, let's try and get this front end off. It's basically almost ready to go. There's some connectors I gotta do, or well, unplug, and should be good to go on that. So let's get into this thing. Okay, so front end's off. It wasn't too hard. There's some screws on the front that go to the fairing stay. There's some tabs here, and then the other ones that go to the headlight connector for the ignition that was already unplugged. This one, and then you have the one that goes to the tach. So wasn't very hard. That's pretty quick. So now what I'm looking for is, obviously we're gonna get rid of these fairings. These are trash. Well, not trash. I could probably resell them to somebody if they need, but I'm not going to keep them. We're going to get a new fairing kit. Aftermarket fairing kits are really not that expensive, so it's definitely worth the while to probably get a new fairing kit on a rebuild. So yeah, forks look straight, a little dirty, nothing too crazy, no big scratches. Looks like they didn't get too much damage other than the front fairing stay there. It's kind of hard to see, but yeah, so here's what I'm thinking on this. It looks like we can save most of this stuff here. Air ducts were fine, so that's good. Clip-ons are fine, they're straight. This bar end wasn't damaged, that one wasn't damaged. This was damaged, obviously, the top triple tree. So, bottom triple tree still has tabs. That means we're good on that. Everything looks to be in pretty good shape, actually. The rear sets that go to, well, basically the pegs, if you don't know what rear sets are, look fine. There's nothing broken really. There's nothing too crazy. So this bike really isn't that bad. One thing I do know though is it's very dirty. So we're gonna have to kind of go through, clean this thing. And when I say clean, it's deep clean. So I usually take the bike out, spray it with a bunch of degreaser, and then hit it with a pressure washer. That tends to clean most of the things out. Obviously, if we're gonna do that, you're gonna wanna cover the tank since there's no gas cap, and that will be replaced by an OEM ignition kit. Okay, so the other thing I noticed was the chain. You definitely don't wanna ride with a chain that looks like that. Is it possible? Yes. Do you wanna do it? Probably not. I wouldn't, at least. The other thing I noticed was these wires hanging down. This does have a fender eliminator, which means that the ugly stock fender is not there. I'm pretty sure these bikes still come with them. I don't even know. I haven't looked yet. So I'm assuming some of those wires are for brake lights and some of them are for fender eliminator for the actual license plate bracket light. So that way, you know, anybody behind you can see the plate if you run one. And then battery, we're gonna have to replace that, definitely. So basically what you're gonna wanna do is turn the motor over. We do know this motor turns over, but by hand. So a lot of people, you know, they don't know what turning over or cranking means. It's the same thing. If a motor's cranking or turning over, that means that the motor is actually doing rotation. So you can spin the motor by hand, and that'll actually turn the motor, and you can hear if there's any, you know, valve to piston contact or any weird noises, or if anything's getting hung up, so like tight spots, things like that. That'll basically tell you. So for this, what I usually do to turn a motor over is I take the stator cover off, and then I take a ratchet and I actually spin the flywheel. The flywheels are connected to the cranks, so essentially when you're spinning that bolt, it's turning the motor over or cranking it essentially, and yeah, you'll be able to tell if it's binding or anything like that. So this one's good to go. This one's honestly not that bad. I'll show you guys the other side here shortly, but just wanted to kind of show you what we're working with. It's really not that bad. So we're looking at mostly fairings, ignition, fuel for sure. I smelt the fuel in there and that is no good. So we're just gonna replace the fuel after. We might have to do some injection cleaning and also get a fuel pump filter, because that pump might be pretty gunked up. Fuel does crystallize over time, so that's probably a bad thing. So let me show you the other side, and yeah, we'll get into it. All right, so here's the other side of the bike. Not too bad, honestly. There is a rear master hanging down. Rotors are kind of rusty. That will come off. The rust on the rotors usually come off with some usage. Looks like this thing's actually pretty clean and really not that bad. So it looks like we have the brake sensor hanging, the rear master. The rear set's not bent or scraped too bad either. The tab's still on it. So we got some leaves and stuff in there, but other than that, nothing too crazy. Forks look straight. Everything kind of looks good. So it looks like we're gonna be messing with mostly just some wiring in the back. Trying to think of what else. Fairing kit, chain, ignition, fluids. Obviously, we're gonna have to do the fluids, and yeah, I mean, it's really pretty straightforward. So as far as fluids, any bike that I get in, especially any that have been sitting for a while, I do the antifreeze, I do the oil, and brake fluid. Brake fluid does go bad over time as well. And yeah, you don't want to be messing, especially with brake fluid that's old, because that's definitely a big no-no. So I'm gonna drain the oil, drain the antifreeze, and put a sticker that says no oil or antifreeze, because we don't want anybody or anything trying to start this thing without oil, especially when we get the ignition on, because that's how you blow your motor right there. So let's get into that. Let's get started on getting these fluids drained, and yeah, part one. Okay, so you can kind of see some of this metal here. That's not a big deal. Again, like I mentioned, we're gonna go ahead and vacuum this. We're gonna pull the tank, and then we're also gonna double check just to make sure that there's no metal shavings inside of the tank. And if there is, we're gonna take the fuel pump out, and then we're gonna drain and try to get all that metal out. And then we're also gonna double check the filter on the pump. It hasn't been ran or even primed with the metal in there, if there was any when I was drilling this, but just as a precaution, and it's old fuel. There's old fuel in here. I can shake the bike. I can hear it. I don't know if you can. But there's old fuel in there. We're gonna wanna drain it out anyway. A lot of that stuff could be in the injectors or at least the tank. And if that tank's rusted, that's gonna be a pain in the ass. You have to basically use some special stuff and sit there for a couple hours to clean it, but I mean, that's part of the game. So, by the way, if you haven't already, I would definitely suggest in some power tools. I rarely use basically like any hand tools anymore. There's some Allens and stuff that I will use, but this is the Bauer. I just bought like a cheap one. This is just the adapter so I can go down to smaller sockets, but this thing works. I also have a Matco kit that has Allen tips, so I use this all the time. Just a word of advice, I don't know if you guys still use hand tools, but this saves you a lot of time. So anyway, let's get back to the bike. So, anyway guys, thanks for tuning in for part one. Again, this is the 2006 CBR600. It's a RR rebuild. In part two, you're going to see me do sprockets and chain and all that good stuff. We're going to leave the wheel on since it's on the bike lift now. We got the fuel extracted. We got the fairings off. We inspected the bike. So, it looks like we're pretty much good to go. We just need fluids. We need fairings. We need to assemble that rear master reservoir and the brake sensor, and then clean this thing in depth. I'm probably not going to take too much off of this one. Usually I take the throttle bodies and everything off, but to be honest with you, this one isn't too bad. We can spray this one with degreaser. I am going to take the tank off and show you guys that in part two as well, the fuel pump removal. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of get a basis and know what I'm working with on this bike in part one. So anyway guys, again, part one, thanks for tuning in. Subscribe if you'd like. We're gonna go to part two and do the actual rebuild. That should be here in a week or two when these parts come in, and yeah, we're gonna go in depth. Thanks for watching. Take care.